Welcome to the Forever in Their Hearts podcast with Dale Martin Jr., brought to you by Martin Brothers, providing funerals designed and customized to be as special as your loved one lost. Now, here's your host.
Well, yes, this is your host, Erik Reynolds again, and I'm back with Valerie Martell, Director of Operations for Martin Brothers Funeral Services. And in this episode, Valerie will explain how Martin Brothers prides itself on being a full-service funeral home. So today, we'll find out exactly what that means and how you can use the services of the funeral home during and after the funeral or memorial. Now, before Valerie joins us, just as a reminder that if you have questions or require assistance, you can reach Martin Brothers Funeral Services in Vancouver at 778-330-7799. Again, that's 778-330-7799. Well, Valerie, as always, great to be talking with you again today.
Hi, Eric. Nice to speak to you, too.
Now, I want to talk about the whole idea of full-service funeral home. So can you just take a few minutes and explain that to us? What does being a full-service funeral home mean?
Well, what our families have to know is that they can leave everything in our hands from the time they call on us to assist. So from the time of the death through the funeral or memorial, and after the formal services are over, we take care of everything. We look after the things they don't even realize that they need to take care of. So people can just call on us, they can meet with us, they tell us, sort of what they're after, although we do, lead them through and find out what they need. And they can focus on what matters most to them. And what that is they can focus on gathering as a family. They can focus on grieving. They can focus on, just doing what they need to do for themselves as opposed to worrying about the details. We take care of everything. And that's what it means to be a full-service funeral home.
Now, Valerie, I think I've had this idea of what a funeral service and a funeral home can provide, during the service and before the service, but I've never even thought about what you provide after the memorial or the funeral. So what about that? What services do you provide after the funeral or memorial is finished?
Well, after the funeral or memorial is done, we meet with the family and we can touch base with them. We find out where they're at with their grief. We ask about how they felt about the service. We find out what kind of support they're receiving from their family and friends, sort of what's in place. And we assure them that we're there should they need any further support in the coming days, weeks, months, whatever. Often families haven't decided by the time the service happens where they're going to place the cremated remains, for instance. And so we'll discuss this with them as well. And frequently families don't realize the options that are open to them. They'll sometimes choose to inter the cremated remains in a grave or place them in a niche at the cemetery. And we can assist the family with that. That's not something they have to do on their own just because they finished the service. We can help them find the right cemetery for them. And we'll go out on the day of committal and we'll help them place the urn in the grave or in the niche. This is just an extension to our service. This is something that we can do for them at any point in time. And often this turns into another little family gathering that's really valuable to them and really meaningful as a family unit. Some families will choose to scatter cremated remains. They don't know where this can take place. We have a beautiful yacht from which they can scatter at sea, and people don't realize that that's an option open to them. It's a moving and a memorable service that families don't even think of until it's presented to them. Like I say, it's quite a nice time for them, and again, a nice family gathering. Another service that we provide involves the monument that's placed at the cemetery. So, there's no need to visit another provider to get a headstone or a monument, whatever you want to call it, a grave marker. And because since we have the information already about the deceased on file, we know the preferences of the family. We kind of know the character of the deceased through the style of the service. So we're in the best position to help a family with this. We're there right from the design of the monument and right through to taking the family out to the cemetery to see the monument once it's installed. And this is kind of a service that most families are very surprised at. I'll phone up the family and I'll say, we designed the monument together. It has been installed. It was installed yesterday, for instance. I like to take the family out there right after it's installed because it looks very nice. So I'll phone the family and I'll say, your monument was installed yesterday. Why don't I come by, pick you up, and take you out there to see it? And families are like, you'll do that? Of course we'll do that. That's just an extension to our services. We are a full-service funeral home. I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, your monument's installed. Go check it out. I'll take you there. I'll pick you up at the house in the limousine, and I'll say, gather a few people from your family, and let's go out and let's take a look at it. And I'll stand back and let the family go and take a look, and it's an important time for the family. It's that first time they see their loved one's name in granite or engraved in bronze. And, it's a moving time again. So we'll be there to do that with the family. And finally, of course, there's a lot of business, so to speak, to do after a person has died. We meet with the family to go through everything that family needs to know about clearing up the estate. We help the family by filling out the forms that they need to fill out to apply for the Canada Pension Plan death benefit, the survivor's pension. We send it in on their behalf. They don't even have to think about it. Of course, we never take the place of a lawyer or an accountant, but we do have a list of the things that you need to ask them to do if you use their services. And we go through that list and we check it off and we say, here's something you need to do. Is there a life insurance policy in place? Often people don't even think about that until we say that, and they say, oh, yes, there is. Okay, well, let's take a look at what you need to do to activate that, to get that money out of there. And people are kind of overwhelmed by the amount of business that has to happen afterwards. We'll walk you through that. So those are just some of the things that we can help with after the service.
Now here's a question I have that now that we're talking about after the service, I wouldn't even have thought to ask before, but how long can I call on Martin Brothers professionals after the funeral? I mean, is there a time limit as to the length of relationship that we would have?
Absolutely not, Eric. You can call on us. There's really no end date on our service. Often families will find that our post-service meeting that we have to discuss all those things I talked about, they come to that and they don't require our services any further. Things are good. Everything's fine. Sometimes families will discover much later that they'd like to take part in our grief recovery program, for instance, and that's fine. Families can call upon us whenever they feel the need, whether it's for a quick question or something more involved. And again, no end date on that. It can be months later, years later, doesn't matter. They can call on us anytime. We like to touch base with families from time to time. It's really important to us. And, one of the things that we do is every November we hold a holiday remembrance service where we invite all the families that we have served throughout the year. And we also put it in the media so anyone can attend, whether they've used our services or not. We invite them to gather and remember their loved one at that specific time of year. It's a moving service, and it's, we place it at a time of year that can be really tough on families. Everyone else gears up for those holiday festivities, that fun time they're going to have throughout December and beyond. And if you've lost someone during the year, you might not feel like being festive. Or maybe you do, and you're kind of guilty feeling festive. We gather everyone together. And we often see families at that service that we've served years ago, and they still look forward to coming to that service. And, they attend because it's meaningful and it's comforting to them. And it kind of gives them that opportunity to, again, gather, remember, perhaps grieve a little bit, and then move on to that time of year that can be very trying on them. So, we like to touch base with families. We never say, okay, we're done with you because your service happened, 6 months ago or whatever. Anytime you can call on us.
Now, I've got a question, and we had kind of touched on it a couple of questions ago about you guys have a really great ability to help us through some of the things that we're not thinking about. But I guess that's my question. What if we're there and I don't know what I don't know? I don't really know what I need from the funeral home. How can I ask for things I don't really know about?
Well, you'll find that right from the arrangement interview, we ask questions and we engage you in conversation about a number of things. So, when I sit down with the family from the very first go-around, they've just lost someone. So apart from asking the basics that we require for vital statistics, name, birth date, all of that kind of stuff, where a person was born, things that we need to know to plan the funeral and to register the death, we want to know also what you've been through. And I'm going to ask those questions. This helps me to figure out the best course of action for you. If you tell me that you've been through a long haul and you've been sitting up nights and you've been, at a bedside for a number of weeks, months, whatever it is, and then you say, oh, and we want to have a service tomorrow, I'm going to probably say, might be an idea to take a little step back, maybe give yourself a couple of days, gather the family. You might not be thinking with the clarity that you need. So, that's why I'm asking those questions. I want to know what you've been through. We'll also ask questions about the estate. We want to know how complex or how simple it is so that we can recommend services that you might require in the future. Of course, we have a full network of related professionals that we can refer you to. For instance, I dealt with a family recently that the deceased had a massive wine collection, and they weren't people who knew what to do with this. They had no clue. And, well, I happen to have a wine appraiser on hand that I can call upon and say, this family is in need of a wine appraiser. They don't know what this collection's worth. They have no clue what to do with it. This was an interest area of the deceased, and they don't know what to do. Would you help this family out? Well, absolutely. So they touched base, and, they dealt with their area of expertise together. And so I can do that. We have realtors, estate liquidators, financial planners, lawyers, all of those people that you might not have even imagined you would need. And where do you start? You could start asking friends, well, do you know a wine appraiser? Do you know a realtor? Well, we know some of those people too, and so we can pass you on to that. So that's why we ask those questions. We want to know what's in place. We want to know what you need out of us, and we'll help you all the way through.
Now, Valerie, once we've used your services at Martin Brothers for one of my loved ones, what if I feel that at that time I want to get my funeral arrangements in place? When should I do this?
Well, that's a really common feeling. Once a family has experienced a service with us, once they've walked through everything with us, we find that they start thinking about their own passing. I mean, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And this is normal, and we can help. So during that aftercare appointment, so when we meet with you following the service, we'll actually bring up that topic. And it may not be that you want to plan today. You don't want to do that immediately after. But, it's also the best time to start taking a look at things and thinking about what you want. Because when you've been through the experience of a service, you might get the idea in mind, oh, I would want that too. Or I wouldn't want that. Or that really would be suitable to me. So you kind of get that idea, and you've met with me, you've met with the funeral professionals who have walked you through, and you might say, well, I want to deal with you for my pre-arrangement. That makes a lot of sense. So, give yourself a few weeks, give yourself a month, whatever you feel. I mean, you could do it right away, but sometimes people are quite exhausted after a service, after a funeral that they've been through. So, give yourself that few weeks, that month, see how you feel. And then often people think, though, that it's hard to set foot in the place where the funeral was planned. I hear that from people. They'll say, like, oh, I don't know if I want to come back into the funeral home. I'm kind of nervous. That's where I went to plan my husband's funeral, for instance. Do I really want to go in there and see you again? You're a reminder. But I understand that. That makes sense. Yeah, I am a reminder of your husband's death if I've dealt with you for the service. But then what I hear is they are nervous to come in, but once they've taken that first step, they've come in here, they realize, oh, wait a minute. I'm coming in and I'm seeing a friendly face. I'm seeing somebody who understands. I'm seeing somebody who knows what I've been through, who cares. And our atmosphere here is comfortable. So they come in here and they're like, oh, yeah, this is a familiar, comfortable atmosphere. It makes more sense to come in and see us again than it does to go to a whole new place and tell your story again and say, yeah, I did just bury my husband. I do want to plan my own funeral. We've got most of that information on file already. We know your name. I know your face. I know what you've been through. So it's very normal to want to plan, shortly after you've gone through a funeral experience. And it's a good idea to do so. We know that, and you know that, because if you've just been through a funeral process, you know that there is some work involved. And, it's a good time to do that when you're feeling okay, when it's not, when death is not imminent. So it's a really good idea.
Well, Valerie, before we finish up today, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners?
For sure, Eric. I just want people to know that we are a full-service funeral home. We are always available to families. Families can call us to ask questions at any point in time, and whether or not you've used our services before, it's okay to even call us to ask a question about funerals, about planning funerals, about anything involved with that process. You may have dealt with a funeral home in another city and you've brought cremated remains here and you don't know what to do. You can certainly call on us for that. That's not a problem. We can take care of you. We're always here and we're always available, and this is what we know about. We know how to point you in the right direction, so call on us. You'll be happy you did.
Well, Valerie, as always, thanks for sharing your experience and knowledge here. And I think it will really help families understand the benefits of the full-service care that Martin Brothers can provide. Now, for our listeners, if you can think of someone who might benefit from what we've covered here today, share this episode with them, forward it to them, call them, let them know about it. I promise you they'll thank you. And of course, if you have questions or require assistance, you can reach Martin Brothers Funeral Services in Vancouver at 778-330-7799. Again, that's 778-330-7799, or visit their website at www.mbfunerals.com. Again, that's www.mbfunerals.com. Well, Valerie, as always, thanks so much for the call today.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.
You've been listening to the Forever in Their Hearts podcast with Dale Martin Jr. from Martin Brothers Funeral Services. Our 4 generations of service in the funeral profession have equipped us with a legacy of understanding. In your hour of need, Martin Brothers is there. Call Martin Brothers in Vancouver